So welcome everybody to the second hour of Mindshifters Radio. And today is Friday, so I hope everybody has a good weekend. It's Friday, March the 11th, 2022. And our calling number is 563-999-3581 and press 1, and that puts you into queue to talk to us. We'd love to hear your comments and questions because that makes this your show. While we're waiting on Michael to get dialed in, I'll remind those who are participating in the monthly Mindshifters and Still Point Breathing that tomorrow is our breathing session at 10 o'clock Eastern Time, followed by Tuesday the 15th with our support meeting. So remember to join us and pick your Mindshifter tonight and start writing on Mindshifters and be ready for breathing tomorrow, and that would be awesome. Michael just popped in. I was just reminding those who were participating in the Mindshifters that we were going to be doing Mindshifters tomorrow.
And Still Point Breathing, yes. Yay. Another opportunity to breathe. Anybody who wants to join us, it'll be a small group, so we've got room. And it's a powerful online experience that actually, did you explain the structure of it? It's a one-year program.
No, I had just started with saying that we were going to breathe tomorrow.
Oh, cool. Well, we'll just let folks know if you want to take your process to the next level and you want to participate. There are three different levels or three different ways of participating. You can just do a one session participation, or you can do a 3-session, or you can do a full year. And of course, the price drops from one to the other to the other. And if you're interested, if you have my number or Jamie's, give us a call. Or drop Jeannie an email at jeanie@whyagain.org. It's also a great way to support us. You know, when we do this radio show, we don't get paid to do it. We pay to do it. And with the fact that we're not traveling anymore, support if this is, if this is supporting you, if this is making a difference for you, if this is assisting in your life, then, support us. And we'll be expanding what's available. We're continuously working on upgrading. If you haven't looked at the work that Jeannie's done on the app in the last couple of months, make sure you upgrade to the latest one. The utility of it is just growing exponentially. There's just a whole lot more useful material in it right there on your phone. And to find it, all you do is go into your app store and type in Heartland, one word, Heartland, Aramaic, Aramaic, forgiveness. And we'll be there to support you. One of the nice features that Jeannie put in is that if you are in the app and, you're doing a worksheet, either one of the two versions, or you're working on the children's game, or you're working on the commitment, or, anywhere you're in the app, you can click a button right there, live, write us an email saying, well, what about this, or how does this work? And then Jeannie will get that email. We'll bring it up on the radio show, and then we'll send you back an email telling you when we answered your question. So we're doing everything we can do to make this as available as possible to every mind, heart, and being on the planet. We just set up this morning to begin, or actually to take the study group that's happening in Britain. There's a study group for Why Is This Happening to Me Again that's happening in England. And a young lady named Yinka, starts with a Y, is running that book club. And we participated in it last week and just had a phenomenal response. So mark your calendar, on the 24th and the 31st of March, at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. It's 8:30 London time. It's called Hear My Voice Book Club. And so, Jeannie, you've got the link there, so maybe post it in the notes. And if anybody wants to pick that up, mark your calendar, December 24th and the 31st at 3:30 Eastern Time. So it'll be 2:30 Central Time, 1:30 Mountain Time, and 12:30 West Coast Time, California. And so the link will be there. It's a Zoom meeting. You can just tap right in and ask questions. And we're going to carry on with that for who knows how long. It might be another eternal event that we do as this radio show. We're in our 11th year. And so the 24th and 31st of March, and we'll be continuing with that. moving forward. So come and play, come and join us. And if you have any questions or thoughts, our call-in number, if you're on one of those stations where we can't see you, is 563-999-3581. Call that number, and you'll be listening to the show live. And we'll look forward to your questions. If you call in and have a question, all you do is hit 1, and we'll be having a conversation. In the meantime, I'm going to continue. There have been still more downloads on the power person dynamic. That's sort of been just really front and center, and we've talked about it, the last couple of radio shows. But I want to go into it on still another level. It's just, it's something that was integrated into the codependence to interdependence intensive back, 20 years ago or more, and it's remained relatively constant. But recently, there's been a new level of download on it, new insight into it. So, this power person dynamic, and just for review, if you haven't been part of the show when we've talked about it, there are 3 things that cause the power person dynamic to be installed in someone's mind. And I say that installed just like you install a piece of software. So if 3 things occur simultaneously, the object of that situation is going to have a power person dynamic installed in their mind, and that power person dynamic is going to control every instant of the rest of their lives. And my offering is, this is what runs the world. This is the bottom line of what runs the world. So what are the 3 things? What are the 3 events that have to happen? 1, there's someone who has more, and it's usually a parent with a child, though not necessarily, someone who has more power over your life than you do. I worked with a man a few years ago. He was in his 70s. When he was in a store that was being robbed, they held a gun to his head, and in came that power person dynamic, and he had to do quite a bit of work to process through it. And whenever anything resonated that, it was full-blown major, what we call PTSD. It's really not, there's no D on PTS. It's really a natural response to a traumatic event. And there's no disorder about it, but it leads to disordered behavior in the future if we don't ever recognize what it is and clean it up. So this person has more power in your life than you do. They're not functioning as a human being. What's a human being? A human being is love. This person is not functioning as love. They're in rage or fear or terror or trauma, whatever's going on for them. That's the second thing. Third thing is that the object of the circumstance perceives it as survival. That's why it's usually a parent. I count on this person for survival, and if they've withdrawn their support, their caring, their raging, what have you, then there's a tendency for there to be a perception in the child or the object of that situation of there being survival involved. So when those 3 things happen, the object of the situation, their energy field is open wide. They're just like an open book, a sponge, literally on an energetic level, taking in every energy from the environment, including the thoughts, the feelings, the dynamics, every dynamic that's going on in the power person. Again, usually a parent. So this whole power person dynamic is a part of what we call the replicate mind. And the replicate mind is the mind that can only reproduce what's in it. It's like your computer. Your computer is a replicate device. It can only reproduce what's in it. If it's programmed into your computer that 2 plus 2 equals 3, then every time you ask your computer what 2 plus 2, the replicate mind of the computer, so-called mind, is going to tell you 3. If it's properly programmed that it's 4, then it's going to tell you 4. If it's programmed that it's 10, it's going to tell you 10. And someone under the influence of this power person dynamic is exactly the same. Whatever's been structured in is going to run behavior at that point. So this is part of the replicate mind, and that replicate mind is literally developed over thousands of generations. And the seeming survival skills, which usually relate to some form of hostility or fear, develops over thousands of generations. And everything that it prompts is a decision from the past. So for the power person dynamic to be active, something had to happen in the past. Remember that this device we call a body-mind unit, and its what appears to be mental function, it is basically a decision-making machine. Decisions from the past will present themselves as reasoned answers and choices today, but they're not choices at all. Now, if I say don't think about the color of your car, whatever information comes forward, whatever that resonates in you comes forward, and that's a decision. It's automatic. There's no choice about it. It's just whatever's there. What's the front door of your house look like? Decision. It's stored in the mind, and up comes whatever's there. If you just moved last week, you might have some confusion between, my new apartment door and my old house door. That's all just stuff from the past. And if we are run by that power person dynamic, that means that our lives are run by the past. And when your life is run by the past, you get to live the title of my book. Why is this happening to me again? There's no future in the past. All there is replicating whatever's there. You remember that there was a student of Yeshua 2,000 years ago, and when he said, I want to follow you, I want to come do that. But then he said, but what I need to do is I need to go bury my father. Now, that didn't mean that his father had just died. There was a tradition in the culture that you took care of your father. If you were the oldest son, you took care of your father until he died. And so what this man was in essence saying to Yeshua is, yeah, I want to come do the work, but what's really important to me is the past. That's what I need to take care of. And Yeshua was really clear. There's no future in the past. There's no life there. It can only repeat the thoughts, the put downs, the behaviors, the feelings that go with that power person interaction. That's why it feels like crap. Whenever it's activated, whenever it's resonated into activity, and what resonates these things into activity is stress. So the level of stress you're under determines the behavior you will do out of the replicate mind based in the power person dynamic. When there's no stress, and I just invite everybody to take a look at your life. When there's no stress, here's what runs your life. I guarantee it. Here's what runs the world. No stress, you'll do what you did to get along with your power person. That will be a decision. There's a thing in the mind we call the automatic decision system. It will kick in, it will take over, and it'll run your life. If you are not awake enough to run your life out of choice, then that decision will take over for you. When stress starts to build, you'll shift out of doing what you did to get along with your power person, and you'll shift into doing what you did to resist and survive with your power person. So, maybe it was Mr. Joker or Ms. Joker when, the stress was low. So, this person, in order to get along with their power person, was always a joker, always was able to get a smile on Dad's face by being the joker. Then when stress started to build, if what happened is he became Mr. Snarky or Miss Snarky, then this person who's always jovial and funny, and all of a sudden there's a persona shift. Personality means mask in Greek. There's a personality shift. And this person, that maybe you've known them for 5 years, maybe you married them, and they've always been Mr. or Ms. Joker and fun and exciting and neat and cool. And all of a sudden, stress builds. Maybe they're working on a big, wonderful project, and there's so much on their minds that their stress is elevated to that next level. And it doesn't matter whether your stresses are wonderful or nasty. If your stress is elevated to that next level, then you'll shift into the second level of behavior, and that is you'll do what you did to resist and survive. So all of a sudden, this person you've lived with is Mr. Fun and or Miss Fun, and things are cool. Stress builds, and all of a sudden, they're Mr. or Miss Snarky, and you say, where did you come from? I've never seen you before. What happened? This isn't who I married. And then, when that same person becomes ultra-stressed, they will do what their power person did to them that they hated the most. And that's going to feel like hell, because it is the same hell, the same energetic dynamic is resonating by that stress as when it happened originally with the power person. So you'll go right back. If you were 3 years of age and there's a raging power person ready to punch you in the mouth, and there's terror, then guess what happens when you get into that ultra-stress place? You're going to terror. And maybe that power person punched you in the mouth, and what are you going to want to do? You're going to want to punch somebody in the mouth. So if you develop your spiritual faculties, the power of choice comes in, and rather than letting that dynamic run you, you can start to, and this isn't going to happen in an instant, but you can start to choose, and you can forgive or remove those dynamics. And you're going to have to embrace and move through all the dynamics of its development, applying forgiveness at every turn. That's just what it's going to take. You're going to get to feel, if it's something that happened repeatedly, you're going to get to feel each stage of assault from that power person. And it's going, your mind, if you're in denial, if you're in the game of everybody else is to blame in your life, whenever there's a stress, you talk about somebody else and they're the problem. Then what's going to happen is your mind's going to take all of the energetic dynamics of that power person experience, and they're going to project it into your brain's image of someone else. And the person you say, I dearly cherish you and I want to be so close to you, all of a sudden is going to become, they're going to sit in the seat of, they're going to be transferred into this power person file in your mind, and they're going to become your power person. So you may start to say, I really resent you. Why do I resent you? Well, my power person resented the hell out of me. I sucked in that energy when that dynamic was running. So now I don't resent anybody. I would never have anything to do with resentment. So now that denied and dissociated content is projected into one's image of whoever they're interacting with. So a parent who hasn't resolved a power person dynamic with their parent has a 3-year-old that, they cherish you. And all of a sudden one day, ultra stressed, the resentment that came from, that literally was absorbed, sucked in like a sponge from the power person, all of a sudden is projected in the brain's image of the child that's 3. And here the parent now resents the child or the spouse. So you're going to have to embrace each stage of that and be conscious and move through the dynamics of the development of that. And at every twist and every turn, there's going to be the application of forgiveness. When they said to Yeshua, how many times do we need to forgive? How many worksheets do we need to do around a situation with this brother or that brother? And they asked him, is 7 times enough? In Aramaic, his response was, no, 77 times 70. Power person dynamic is going to be probably 7 times 7 times 70. Every twist and turn, every time that was experienced, it's going to have to be moved through. So let's take an example. Imagine that your power person with their negative energy always told you what was wrong with your ideas. Why even the best idea that you had was crap. And why did they tell you it was crap? Because it was coming from you. They were under stress. They threatened. And in that threat, if you perceived it as survival, they were not functioning as love. They had the control. They had the power. And your field opened. And if what they continuously told you was what was wrong with you and why your ideas were never any good and why the best idea that you could come up with, there was always a reason given for why it was no good, why it would be refused, why that power person would say no matter what you were offering them, then, you might wonder if that's what you play out. Why, when you point that dynamic at somebody who's close to you, why they kind of go gray every time you do it. Just think about it. Every time your power person puked on you with telling you what was wrong with you and why no matter how high a level of integrity, no matter how good a person you tried to be, there was always something wrong with you. You were never to be trusted. Remember how you used to go gray when that would happen? Have you ever watched the people when you point that dynamic, that power person dynamic at them, how they go gray? Now, if they're conscious, they'll keep coming back until it's all worked through. But most people just go gray, go black, disappear, gone, out of it. They don't have the capacity to stay conscious because they haven't worked through what their power person dynamic is. So when ultra stressed, several things will become resonated and will tend to take over behavior. What do those things look like? Well, 1, you will do what your power person did to you that you hated the most. whatever that is will feel right, and the mind will literally hallucinate that behavior that you hated so much is the key to success and winning, the key to safety. So that's one of the first things that's going to happen. So that behavior that you just abhorred, so back to that situation, being told what was wrong with you every time, notice that the automatic decision system will kick in. Key to being safe, the key to success, the key to winning will be telling this person what's wrong with them. And that, they could never have a decent idea, so puke on everything. Make up, just make crap up. Make up any kind of crap you want that proves that their idea can't possibly be any good, just like your power person did with you. Then everything, every energy, mental, physical, emotion, leaves the open field of the child, steeping in it, in whatever went to the power person doing what they did. So if, let's say, and again, this is an energetic dynamic, it's not necessarily a cognitive dynamic. So let's say that the power person, something that's pretty common is people have blood sugar problems. And so when their blood sugar drops, they become like vicious bears. Literally, it's like, I remember one year we had a woman at Heartland who was on the support team, and that was her reputation. And everybody started to realize that when she was hungry, she just became vicious. And it wasn't her volition, it wasn't her choice. It was just that if she didn't eat properly because of her blood sugar problems, and actually, I can remember very specifically what happened when this woman worked through that, and it disappeared. But the reputation she had with everybody was when they saw that start, when that would happen, and they'd feel that energy for her, it was like, we got to feed her, get her some food. And if she got some food, she'd recover from that. So whatever was going on with the power person, if they were hungry, then the tendency will be hunger. If they were sexually aroused, the tendency will be to go into sexual arousal under that great deal of stress. If they were in physical tension, because, again, remember, the child's energy field opens wide to absorb everything that's in the environment. And so if there was physical tension in the power person, then that energy is going to be absorbed, and then it's going to tend to be re-radiated 2 years, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years later. If it's never worked through, it will become the foundation of the behavior of that individual who was subject to the power person dynamic. And it'll run their lives when they're under stress. The next thing that will happen is that the voice coming out of your mouth will literally be the voice of your power person, literally. And it will appear to be your voice. But the energy behind it, literally the energy behind your voice, and the thought and word patterns will be that of your power person. I mean, literally, it will come right down to saying exactly the same words that just gritted your teeth if you ever heard your power person say it. But what happens is when somebody's under a great deal of stress, the mind is not available for reason to happen, for choices to happen. And so whatever kind of confusion is going on in the mind will just run the show. In that case, what happens, one unconsciously looks into the person that they admired as God. And who was that? That was the person who won in those dire situations where it was survival. Power person was a parent. The parent is looked at as God. What did God do when the stress was up and the chips are down in order to win? And the unconscious mind advises that's what you do in order to win. Right down to the thought and word patterns. The next thing that will happen is all of the goals absorbed from your power person will be active in you. And you'll probably be just as frustrated as they were that you can't control everything and everybody. If your power person, if the energy that was going on was in that situation where the power person dynamic was installed in your mind was they needed to be in control, and they were under great frustration, perhaps rage about not being able to be in control, then you'll be just as frustrated as they were, that you can't control everything and everybody. And to try to control everything and everybody is the biggest mistake, because if you think you can control everything and everybody, that means you have to be responsible for everything and everybody. And that's more of a burden than anybody can carry. That's what ran your power person. It will tend to run you until you go, oh, that's why I feel so stressed when the stress is up and the chips are down and I'm trying to control somebody. And it doesn't matter who it is. You know, you can turn that energy on a child of 3, on a newborn, on the cherished aging parent, on a grandmother, on a cherished loved one. It's just how the game is played. It's just how the automatic decision system in the mind goes. And trying to be responsible for everything and everybody is more of a burden than anybody can carry. Literally, than anybody can carry. It's too much. And if you want to destroy yourself, just try to carry that burden. Watch how things break down. Now, the next thing that will happen is, this is the time that you most need to hear correction and most need to apply forgiveness, because you're replicating the dynamics of the power person. But here's what will happen. You'll resist the same way as your power person did. If what was going on in the power person at that point, if you try to say, but Dad, but Mom, what about? And they said, shut up, kid, you're stupid, there's nothing you can tell me that would be useful, then you will tend to have the same verb as your power person did, the same resistance, the same struggle against correction, against forgiveness. No, I don't want anything to do with it. And this is a really important reason to make choices before you get under that kind of stress. And all these things I'm describing are what your energy system is naturally going to cause you to feel like doing. And that's why you have to make a choice as to what you're going to do, and never, ever again do what you feel like doing. Because if you do what you feel like doing, and I were to say to you, well, why are you doing it? And you say, I don't know, I just feel like it. What that means is there are unconscious thoughts in you that are running your life. And they're from the power person dynamic. And you'll have, if you remember, think back to how, frustrated you were, how perhaps enraged you were at your power person, how much you wanted to get out of there with your power person. And notice that that's exactly the same energy that your power person had when the stress was up and the chips were down. The resistance to truth that the power person had will be your level of resistance. And in fact, it won't be you resisting. It will be your power person's resistance that's being replicated. Literally, the energy, remember, when the child is in that circumstance, the energy field of the child opens wide, and the physical, mental, emotional, sexual energy that's in the space is going to be absorbed by that child. So the same resistance to doing the work that needs to be done will be that of your power person. If you think about, did you ever sit down with your power person and say, well, how about if you just look at this? Now, in the state where the stress was up and the chips are down, remember the resistance they had to even hearing anything you had to say? Remember how they'd puke on everything you advised, everything you suggested, even though your suggestions were wonderful and would have changed their lives forever? Be careful, because if that's happened to you with your power person, you're doing that with the people in your life now. When you get to ultra stress, remember, here's what the automatic decision system forces. It's going to force you to do what your power person did to you that you hated the most. And that causes people to go gray. Pardon me, that's an error. I shouldn't say that causes. If there's the tendency in someone to go gray, to just vacate, to just kind of become black and white and disappear, that's what it will resonate in them until they work through it. And so, each individual is responsible for what they're going to do in those situations. So the hostility that your power person had toward correction will be your hostility toward correction. Exactly what your power person did to you when you offered correction to them is what, under stress, the automatic decision system will kick in and cause you to do to the people you're standing in front of. So the very attributes of the power person, the resistance to control whatever it is, exactly what your mind energetically will feed back to you. So if your power person was resistant to admitting or looking at the truth of how they were treating you and continued the negative treatment, when you're ultra stressed, you'll tend to refuse to admit how you're treating others, and you'll tend to continue treating them in that way. It's just what runs the situation, the underlying dynamics in the mind. They're the energetic dynamics that are absorbed. So the question you want to ask yourself is, what exactly is the goal that, when violated, created so much stress, brought in such a level of stress that my mind used this unresolved, unconscious power person dynamic to build a pain-based reality that is massaged into looking like it's totally true about today's circumstance, but in fact, it's exactly being replicated from the past. So it really seems to be true about somebody else, but it causes me to displace the actuality of the moment with my pained perceptual construct, to put my reality in front of what the truth is. Somebody might be reaching out, cherishing you, honoring you, supporting you, but if the power person dynamic is active, what your mind will be inclined to do, what you'll feel like doing, is puking on them the same way your power person puked on you. And it's just something else to be forgiven. It's just something else to be removed. So that's the first thing to do, is to just take a look at that. What's the goal that, when violated, causes my mind to go into that state, and then start to do forgiveness around that goal? Disorder. What's the power person message that was given to me that's at the root of my pain-based perception? Now, this one's going to surprise you. How do you tell what it is? Just listen to what you're saying to the person in front of you. Listen to what you're saying to the person that you're in the current conflict with. That's your power person's voice speaking. And that's what you heard from your power person, replicating the words. So the person you're in a current conflict with, just look at what you're saying. There it is. In the current conflict. Or if you look at it, the repeated conflicts that you've had. Because the mind's just going to keep replicating this until it's completed. So take a look at that. And again, apply forgiveness. And then when I look at that thought disorder, conclusions do I come to about myself based on that unconscious thought disorder? What was the message that came from the power person? You're not trustworthy. You will never be trustworthy. You'll never be good enough. You'll always be the problem. You're always the bad one. You always were the bad apple. No, of course I could never trust you. Whatever the message is. Oh, you should have been a girl. You should have been a boy. So what's the conclusion that I come to out of that thought disorder? And then what conclusion do I come to about them based in this false construct of my mind? And I'm willing to really own that and move through that. And then if I were to really be truly, totally honest with myself, what's the actuality of the situation? If I stop replacing the actuality with this power person construct structure in my mind, if I allowed the actuality in, would it support me in healing my underlying thought disorder? You know, am I really sure that what my mind is telling me is true in this situation? And then, to step into the forgiveness process, to step into the worksheet process, what's the goal that drives this whole thing? What is it that I want from this person in today's conflict? What is it that I want from them? Well, maybe I want them, my goal is probably going to match what my power person wanted from me. Oh, I just want you to shut up and listen. I just want you to do what you're told. I want you to be controllable. So that power person message, to me, will tend to be the message that I hand on to someone else. So, when I look at that goal and I choose to forgive, then I can start to crack that unconscious energetic pattern that's got such a crust. And remember, this is something, let's circle back to the beginning of our presentation today. This is something that's been in development for 1,000 generations in your bloodline. It's not going to crack easily. It may not crack on the first, the second, the 10th, or the 100th worksheet. And then take a look at what's the punishment that you do. And you probably don't call it punishment when you do it to the person that's in front of you today. But when your power person did it to you, you sure called it punishment. How did it feel when you were talked to that way, when you were spoken to in that tone of voice, when you were described with those kinds of words? How did that feel? And that's probably how you're feeling right now in the current situation, but it isn't based on what's happening in the current situation. It's based on what's stored unresolved from the power person dynamic. And, be aware that, when my power person did that behavior, I probably called it abuse. When I do it, I don't call it abuse. I'll say that I'm just protecting myself or expressing my power or being careful or, whatever it is that I choose to make the excuse of. So if I really look at that, call it something different, but and there'll be a resistance. Remember, in Aramaic, the word Satan means the resistor, one who misleads. If I've got a great deal of unresolved pain about something my power person did, that's where it came into play in my mind, then today I'm going to tend to, when I'm doing exactly the same behavior my power person did to this other person, I'm going to say, but it's not that, it's something else. I'm just protecting myself or whatever, expressing my power. And then when I actually look at the facts, does anything support the conclusion I'm drawing when I'm under the spell of this power person dynamic? And am I willing to stop playing that one out? Like, how long does it go on, and how many people do I have to send away? How many people are going to leave? Yeah, I've got a whole story about they left because of what they were doing and they were abusing, but what was the part that I played? And am I willing to soften into that part and bring healing to it? And when I do, then everything changes. And I get to drop into a place where there's such deep, resonating pain. And this is the part that is not Dr. Feelgood, but it's a profound place to go as love. Bringing love present with you dissolves all of those old power person dynamics. So am I willing to soften and embrace directly, rather than projecting my brain's image on another, this deep, it might be rejection, it might be hate, it might be rage, viciousness, whatever it is. Am I willing to soften and embrace this energy coming from inside of me? And if I'm not, then I'll get to do it again. This will be, if I never learn to change this, then I'll get to live the title of my book. Am I doing this to myself again? And it's time for that to just be dissolved and cleaned up. And in regard to relationship, this is kind of like the core of the codependence piece. Remember our definition of denial in this work. Whenever I think or speak as though something outside of me is the cause of what's happening inside of me, I'm in denial. When I go into denial, I have to dissociate from the part of me that's the real cause. Invariably, where there's hostility or fear, the power person dynamic is involved in the real cause. And that's what I need to embrace and move through. So that's what we're here to support you doing. Waking up to the truth of who you are, living as conscious, active, present love, and moving past this power person dynamic. So I hope that fits and makes sense. It's kind of a new level of, for me, after a quarter century of teaching it, it's just new insights that are opening to broaden this understanding of the power person dynamic. I move from codependence. And what's a codependent? Codependence is exactly the same definition of our definition of denial. Whenever I think or something outside of me, or somebody is outside of me, and they're responsible for what's happening inside of me, I'm in a codependent relationship. Doesn't matter if I think the dog scared me. The dog caused all this fear in me. I'm in codependent relationship with the dog. Now, if I have fear and I can own it, instead of talking about how the dog frightened me, I go, wow, that dog looked so vicious, brought up so much terror and fear in me. Now I can come into direct relationship with my terror and fear and start to delete it, start to forgive it. But if I think the dog caused it, I'm stuck in the construct of my mind called perception that lies to me. And we're looking to support shifting that dynamic. And it is literally the dynamic that runs the whole world. I don't care whether you go into a business, a church, an educational institution, government, family. I don't care whether the family is Russian or American or English, British, French, Chinese. I don't care who it is. It's the dynamic that runs the world. Few are those that will wake up from it. And what we're working to do is to get enough people to become conscious enough that they wake up from it. And when we get a core group of people who are conscious and work through that, then together we will energetically create a safe space for this dynamic to be disappeared from the world and for us to function as human beings. So that's what we're here to do. And we're glad that you're here to be part of the process. And Miss Jeannie, do we have anybody in the phone queue with a hand up or anything happening in the chat room?
It is all quiet, but we've got 16 minutes. We've got plenty of time. Press 1 or ask your question in the chat room.
Yeah, if you're out there in listener land, again, our call-in number, 563-999-3581. I can't imagine that anybody listening wouldn't have some kind of thought over what I just presented.
We have a hand up.
Yeah, good. Cool. Let's say hello.
541, you're on the air. Who do we have?
Celinda.
Well, hey there, young lady. How are you?
Well,
How's
I'm
that
doing
power
really
person
well.
dynamic looking in your mind?
Full blown and real big. I am working with her just I'm just really abiding with her and working with her. And so I wanted to tell you how much I appreciate your elaboration today. It's like you took my understanding, or you shared information that allowed me to understand on a much deeper level the dynamics of my life and the challenges I have in my relationships with loved ones and with my community.
Well, it's important to look in both directions with this power person dynamic. So you look at when you were the object of the power person situation, that will open a space for tremendous healing. And then if you look at where you were the power person, when you look in both directions, healing will accelerate.
That's sweet news, because that's exactly how I took your expansion of the power person dynamic, and I saw whole aspects of my behavior with other people in a much fuller dimension, the result. So, yes, I hope it blasts me into the wonderful space of my own healing, me in partnership with the Holy Spirit, creation, life.
Sweet. So any specific thought that you want to share, insight that you want to share, or question that's on your mind?
Well, a couple of them. I realized that it would be nice to do a worksheet around shame, like there are two consistent themes that show up in my life around the worksheets, and one is shame. Of course, fear is always there. And my uncovering of my unconscious rage, as I shared with you before, one of the greatest confirmations for me came from your book was those little stick diagrams of the man and the woman, and one consciously being aware of rage, and the and unconsciously locked down with fear, and the other one being the one consciously aware of fear with the lockdown of rage, which was my pattern. And it doesn't matter whether it's
matching bags of garbage.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Right.
And so my unconscious rage would tend to propel me into relationships where rage and hostility would be a dynamic at the same time, and also a rage for my quote-unquote imperfections of my parenting and the dynamics of that intergenerational downflow of downloads to downloads to downloads, and how I myself, through my unknowingness, my ignorance, my knowing nothing, and my inability, if I did know at that time, because I didn't have the tools, to pass that again down to the next generation. And so that is involved with my shame as well. My shame for being worthless and can never do it right, plus linked with my shame of being the abuser. Or the.
Do you remember when you got those messages from your power person? Do you remember specific times you were handed those thought disorders in that survival situation?
Right. I don't actively remember, but my mother was very proud of the way she raised me, and she was the one, I've mentioned this before, and she was the one that would, that in that situation when I was about 2 years old and had my first temper tantrum, made sure that I wouldn't have another one. Yeah. And she was very proud of me.
Pretty heavy duty.
Mm-hmm. And I don't remember it consciously, and I'm not even sure if I'm supposed to remember it consciously, but I do see that the energy is stuck in my body, and it comes out in different ways. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not necessary to have cognitive awareness of it. That's the beauty of this piece that Yeshua gave us of forgiveness, is that when you apply first century Aramaic forgiveness, you collapse the perception based on the, deep, maybe 20 generation old energetic dynamic that's playing out here. And that may never become cognitive, or it may, but you get to process the energy of it. You get to hold love present. Well, the impetus of that energy might not be strong enough to ever form a picture in your mind or reform the memory in your mind, but energetically you get to process the underlying energetic dynamic. And that might take, as Yeshua said, 77 times 70 worksheets. But as you do that
Right.
work, the result is just monumental.
There are a couple of things that I've become aware of physiologically for myself. And one is that my shaking that I mentioned to you with my arm and my hand, which is always my left hand, that, by the way, is my dominant hand, that only happens when I am in a hypoglycemic state and or a very, very nervous state, extremely nervous. And then the other, and it doesn't do it with my right hand, which is I find very interesting. And I've come to a tentative possibility that that is my rage coming out when that incident happened, because it's coming out through my arm and through my hand.
Yeah, I think you'll find that rage tends
moving. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you'll find that the rage tends to be more oriented toward the thyroid. It's it's usually grief, and so the situation that you described that your mom was so proud of probably would have resonated grief in you as a small child. The rejection, all of the things that go with being treated like that by a power person, thinking they're doing themselves and the child and the family system a favor. But that grief is what tends to lock the pancreas down. I don't know if you've ever looked at the chart on the physiological effects of emotional suppression. When you talk about being hypoglycemic, that's pancreas. That tends to be unresolved grief.
In the Touch for Health, or in the 12 Meridian system, which I have found very, very helpful, the traditional Chinese medicine, and I have run across the lack of sweetness in one's life, which would, to me, in my mind, basically be what I would basically understand is what you're saying. The sweetness, I have no sweetness in my life, was kind of what that.
Well, I support you supplying yourself with some, young lady.
Yeah, right, with my eating disorders, yeah, definitely. And also the helplessness and hopelessness. I mean, why would I lock that rage down? Because of being 2 years old, helpless and hopeless. So I've been looking at that. And for the first time today, although I have entertained it intellectually, for the first time today, I got more of a body feeling on how that was what my mother was feeling right when she was in that place. Shameful, powerless and helpless. And if she didn't control me, her life would be totally uncontrollable. Uncontrollable. Because she mentioned
now think about times when you played the power person dynamic out with your kids and what was going on with you there and what messages did you deliver. Those will relate back to the messages you got.
Actually, I remember a specific incident with my daughter where she was about 2 years old and had what I considered was her first temper tantrum. And I started to do exactly the same thing that my mother was telling everybody was the way that she disciplined, quote unquote, me when I was 2. And I started spanking her little legs, and this voice came into my head and said, "Stop it."
Yeah.
And I did.
Good.
But still, I had done it enough where, Yeah.
And chances are, if you got to the point where you started that, your daughter was already in the space where all her field was open and she was just absorbing all of that
exactly
energy as you absorbed that from your mother, and the resultant playing out of that when absorbing this violence towards self and this rejection would tend to implant the thought disorder of there's something wrong with me.
And also the sense of hopelessness and powerlessness, which would tell me I can't win, right? As you mentioned earlier in the show, I can't win. Yeah. So my only hope is escape. So there was my fear route, my terror route when the chips were really down, to be terrorized, to literally be hysterical, have a nervous breakdown, and not be able to function, or to be immobilized, frozen. Yeah.
And so to be able to embrace, to be that immobilized is terror.
Right.
I would think in most cases. And so to be able to literally embrace that level of terror, to let your physiology open to embrace that level of terror.
And there were 2 times that I felt that terror that I consciously remember. And one was when we were sailing across the ocean. I can't believe I'm talking so calmly. One time was when we were
Well, you've done your
sailing
work around it.
I know. And the way of mastery is really opening me up, Michael and Jeannie.
Sweet.
It's just helping me. It's helping me understand what you're saying. It's almost like, for me, it's the way of the heart and the way of the Christ mind coming together. Like you have more of the intelligent explanation of things, and the way of the heart, as Dr. Tim is reading it and as he expounds on it when he's reading it, is really stirring that heart energy in me. And that's where I've mostly come from through my life. Somehow I think I must have come in with the understanding that it's all about the heart. It's all about relationship. It's all about connection. But didn't understand it really. It just was like a little download that came in with all the other stuff.
Yeah, my input at this point would be that what it's all about, and when you're in that state, it's all about forgiveness.
Right. But if you don't trust, and that but is not to negate what you say, however, if you don't trust, you can't forgive yourself. Scratch that.
Well,
you can't do the forgiveness work.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you can. You don't have to have trust to do it. You don't have to have belief. You don't have to have anything. If you just step into using the forgiveness tool, remember that when perception is based on a power person dynamic, there's a goal that drives it. And, it doesn't matter what I know, what I understand, what I can embrace, if I'll cancel that goal that's driving my mind to use that pained content, that perceptual construct in my mind that comes from that unconscious pained content is going to collapse in on itself. And if I can call love forward in the presence of that, then it's going to dissolve. So, there are no precursors to being able to do that. I don't have to trust, I don't have to believe, I don't have to know, I don't have to understand, I don't have to care. No precursors. All I have to do is engage the tool.
Well, it's really interesting that you say that, because I was going to share with you the two other moments of terror where I was totally undone.
Uh-huh.
Actually, I think I came through the first one more successfully in relation to bringing it to awareness than I did the second, but I'm not sure about that. So anyway, the first was when we were sailing across the ocean and things started breaking down in the boat, and we were left without our equipment and stuff. And here we are on the ocean, and I was totally dependent on Larry's incredible ability to do celestial navigation, because that's what brought us home. We had no
down
equipment.
to 1 minute.
Okay, and so I was so terrorized that my physical body symptoms told me very concretely that I was going to kill myself if I didn't get out of that terror. And a little voice said, do you want to live or do you want to die? And that was, I said, I'll live. Yeah, that's it. And I'll share the other one another time if appropriate.
Okay. Well, maybe we can continue this conversation on Monday. We'll see how it settles in through the weekend. I know for me, this opening on a new level of power person dynamics has been going on for several days now. So we'll see what opens and perhaps continue the conversation on Monday. Appreciate you.
Thank you. And maybe it'll end up in the downloads, too, on the site. That'll be great.
It will.
Blessings.
We can listen again. All right. Take care and blessings. Lots of love. Bye-bye.